Get out of my way, woman. People like you don't belong in places like this.
Get out of my way, woman. People like you don't belong in places like this. The words echoed across the marble lobby of the Transcorp Hilton Hotel in Abuja, causing every head to turn toward the commotion. Expensive perfumes and colognes hung in the air as Nigeria's elite, politicians, diplomats, business moguls, paused their conversations to witness the spectacle unfolding near the grand entrance. Funka stood frozen, her designer handbag slipping from her shoulder, her carefully applied makeup unable to hide the shock spreading across her face. The man standing before her, blocking her path with aggressive posture and sneering contempt, was someone she had spent the last 5 years trying to forget. Obinna, her ex-husband. "I said move!" Obinna barked again, louder this time, his expensive agbada swirling around him as he gestured dismissively. "This hotel is for important people. Whatever hustle brought you here, cleaning, catering, begging, you need to use the service entrance, not the main lobby." Behind him, his entourage laughed. 3 men in equally expensive traditional attire, clearly enjoying the show. One of them, whom Funka vaguely recognized as Obinna's business partner, leaned in and said something that made them all laugh harder. "Look at her standing there like she belongs," the partner said mockingly, "probably hoping to find a rich man to take care of her. Obinna, is this one of your old charity cases? She looks familiar." Funka felt her hands begin to tremble. 5 years. It had been 5 years since she had seen this man, since he had abandoned her when she was 7 months pregnant. Since he had taken everything they owned and disappeared with his mistress, leaving her to give birth alone in a government hospital with no money, no family, and no hope. 5 years since the worst day of her life had become the catalyst for the best transformation she could never have imagined. I'm just trying to get to the elevator," Funka managed to say, her voice barely steady. She could feel dozens of eyes on her now, phones probably recording, social media posts being composed in real time. "The elevator?" Obinna's voice dripped with false surprise and real cruelty. "Why would someone like you need the elevator? What room could you possibly have here? Let me guess, you're doing hair for one of the delegates' wives? Selling something? Or are you here hoping to trap some poor fool into thinking you're worth something?" The words hit her like physical blows, each one designed to humiliate, to diminish, to remind her of the woman she used to be. Poor, desperate, abandoned, worthless. Except that woman didn't exist anymore. Hello, my beautiful people. Welcome to Voice of Auntie Dora, where we bring you the most jaw-dropping, unbelievable stories of karma, justice, and divine retribution. Thank you so much for being here. You are the reason this channel exists. Before we dive into this explosive story that will leave you speechless, do me a huge favor. Drop a comment below and tell me where you're watching from. New York, London, Lagos, Johannesburg, Kingston? Let Auntie Dora know. And trust me, you're going to want to stay until the very end of this one, because what happens next is legendary. Funka straightened her spine slowly, adjusting the designer handbag that had slipped. A limited edition Hermes Birkin that cost more than the car Obinna was probably still making payments on. She smoothed down her custom-made Ankara dress that had been designed by Nigeria's top fashion house specifically for today's presidential function. And she looked at the man who had destroyed her life with eyes that had learned to see clearly through pain. "Obinna," she said quietly, and something in her tone made his smug expression falter slightly. "It's been a long time." "Wait." His eyes narrowed as recognition slowly dawned. "Funka? Is that? Oh my God. It is you." He started laughing, but it was a different laugh now, surprised, disbelieving, still cruel. "Wow, look at you. I barely recognized you. You've gained weight? No, lost weight? Hard to tell under that dress. Where did you get that outfit anyway? Some secondhand market in Woos?" His friends laughed on cue, but Funka noticed that some of the onlookers in the lobby were starting to look uncomfortable. A few hotel staff members had stopped what they were doing, watching the scene with growing concern. "So, what are you doing here?" Obina continued, emboldened by his audience. "Don't tell me you're still chasing me after all these years. Funka, we've been over for what, 5 years now? You need to move on, woman. I'm married now, properly married to a woman who knows how to take care of a man, not like you, always complaining about money, always asking for more. Always, sir." A new voice cut through Obina's rant like a knife. "Sir, is there a problem here?" A hotel security officer had approached, his uniform crisp, his expression professional but firm. Behind him, Funka noticed the hotel manager emerging from his office, concern etched on his face. "No problem," Obina said dismissively, waving his hand. "Just telling this woman she needs to use the appropriate entrance. I'm here for the presidential function, and I don't want—" "Ma'am," the security officer said, completely ignoring Obina and addressing Funka directly with a respect that bordered on deference. "Is this man bothering you? Should I have him removed from the premises?" The question hung in the air like a grenade with the pin pulled. Obina's face went through several expressions in rapid succession: confusion, irritation, then disbelief. "Excuse me? Do you know who I am? I'm Obina Nwosu, CEO of Nwosu Imports. I have an invitation to the presidential function. You can't just—" "Sir," the security officer said, his voice harder now, "I wasn't speaking to you. I was speaking to Mrs. Okonkwo." Mrs. Okonkwo. The name fell like a bomb in the marble lobby. Funka watched as Obina's face went blank with incomprehension. She saw him process the name, saw him try to place it, saw the exact moment when the implication started to penetrate his arrogance. "Okonkwo?" he repeated slowly. What does that have to do with—" "Ma'am," the hotel manager had arrived now, slightly out of breath, his face flushed with anxiety. "Mrs. Okonkwo, I apologize profusely for this incident. We had no idea anyone would be so inappropriate. Your husband's security detail is on their way down, but in the meantime, is there anything we can do to make you more comfortable?" "Your husband." The words seemed to echo in the sudden silence that had fallen over the lobby. Funka could see other guests now actively watching, some with dawning recognition on their faces. She saw phones being raised, not to mock her, but to capture what was clearly about to become a major scandal. "I'm fine, thank you," Funka said calmly, her voice steady now, carrying the quiet authority of someone who had learned to navigate rooms filled with power. "Just trying to get to the presidential suite. My husband is expecting me." "Presidential suite," Obina repeated numbly. His brain seemed to be working in slow motion, processing information that didn't make sense. "Your husband." "Okonkwo." "Damilola Okonkwo," the hotel manager supplied helpfully, too flustered to realize he was twisting the knife. "The president's son. Surely you know that Mrs. Okonkwo is—" "The president's daughter-in-law," one of Obina's friends finished, his voice barely a whisper. The blood had drained from his face. "Oh God, Obina, do you know who you just—" But Obina was no longer listening. He was staring at Funka as if seeing her for the first time, really seeing her. The designer dress that he'd mocked as second-hand, the Hermes bag he'd dismissed, the diamond wedding ring on her finger that probably cost more than his entire business, the way the hotel staff addressed her with genuine respect and barely concealed panic at the thought that she might have been offended. You're married to—" He couldn't even finish the sentence. "Damilola Okonkwo," Funka confirmed gently, almost kindly, which somehow made it worse. "For the past 3 years, we have a daughter together. Beautiful little Zainab. She's 2 now. And my son from my previous marriage? The one you never met because you abandoned me when I was pregnant with him? Damilola adopted him legally. Ifeanyi calls him daddy now." Each sentence was delivered quietly, factually, without malice. But each one hit Obina like a sledgehammer to the chest. But you were nobody," he stammered, his voice cracking. "You had nothing. You were living in that terrible one-room apartment in Gwagwalada. You were broke, you were—" I was abandoned by my husband while pregnant, Funke said softly. Yes, that's true. And for a while after you left, I had nothing. I gave birth to Ifeanyi alone. I worked 3 jobs to feed him. I lived in that one room and wondered how I would survive. The lobby was completely silent now. Even Obina's friends had gone quiet, realizing they were witnessing something extraordinary. But what you didn't know, Obina, is that while I was working one of those jobs, cleaning offices in the presidential complex, I met someone who saw me not as a charity case or a hustle or something to be used and discarded, someone who saw me as a human being with worth and dignity and potential. This is insane, Obina whispered, but there was no conviction in his voice now, just dawning horror. Damilola and I became friends first, Funke continued, her voice taking on a faraway quality as she remembered. He would stay late working in his office, and I would clean. We started talking about life, about struggles, about hope. He never looked down on me for being a cleaner. He never judged me for being a single mother. And when he asked me to dinner 6 months later, it wasn't because he wanted something from me. It was because he had fallen in love with who I was. She paused, letting her words sink in. We dated for a year before he proposed. His father, the president, was concerned at first, of course, but Damilola told him that I was the woman he loved, and nothing else mattered. We had a private wedding, away from media attention, because we wanted to build our foundation in peace. And for 3 years, we've been happy, truly happy. Obina looked like he might be sick. His expensive agbada suddenly seemed ridiculous, his entourage embarrassed. His earlier bravado completely shattered. So, to answer your earlier questions, Funke said, her voice gentle but firm. Yes, I belong here. This hotel is hosting a presidential function, and I'm here because my father-in-law is the president and my husband is the guest of honor. No, I don't need the service entrance, and no, I'm not here to hustle, beg, or trap anyone. She took a step forward, and Obina automatically took a step back. I'm here because this is my life now, a life I built from the ashes of the one you burned down when you abandoned me, a life I earned through hard work, dignity, and the love of a good man who saw my worth when you couldn't. The elevator dinged behind them. The doors opened to reveal a tall, distinguished-looking man in an impeccable suit, flanked by 2 discreet security personnel. He was handsome in that refined way that spoke of good breeding and better education, with kind eyes that immediately found Funke in the crowd. There you are, Damilola Okonkwo said, his voice warm with affection and slight concern. I was worried when you didn't come up. Is everything all right? He stepped out of the elevator and immediately went to Funke's side, his hand naturally finding the small of her back in a gesture of protection and intimacy that spoke of years of genuine partnership. Everything's fine, Funke assured him, leaning into his touch. Just ran into someone from my past, someone who was just leaving. Damilola's eyes swept the lobby and landed on Obina with the sharp assessment of someone trained to read situations quickly. His expression didn't change, but something in his posture shifted, a subtle hardening that made the security personnel straighten. I see, he said quietly. And was this person bothering my wife? No, darling, Funke said gently. Just a reminder of how far I've come. How far we've come. She turned back to Obina, who stood frozen, his face a mask of shock, regret, and dawning terror as he realized the full magnitude of his mistake. It was interesting seeing you again, Obina, she said softly. I hope life treats you well. I genuinely do. But I need to go now. My husband and I have a presidential function to attend. She linked her arm through Damilola's and started toward the elevator. Behind her, she heard the hotel manager speaking in sharp, quiet tones to Obina about appropriate behavior and consequences. She heard Obina's friends abandoning him, making excuses, desperate to distance themselves from what had just happened. But she didn't look back. As the elevator doors closed, Damilola looked down at her with concern. Are you really okay? That man, Was he my ex-husband? Funke confirmed. The one who left me pregnant and alone 5 years ago. The fool who abandoned you, Damalola said, anger flickering in his usually calm eyes. Should I have him removed from the hotel? Banned from the function? I can make a call. No, Funke said, surprising herself with how much she meant it. Let him stay. Let him attend the function. Let him see exactly what kind of life I have now, what kind of man I married, what kind of family we've built. That will be punishment enough. Damalola pulled her close, kissing the top of her head. Have I told you today how incredible you are? Not in the last hour, Funke said, managing a smile despite the trembling in her hands. Then let me remedy that. You are incredible, strong, graceful, and far too good for a fool who couldn't see what he had. As the elevator rose toward the presidential suite, Funke leaned against her husband and let herself process what had just happened. She had dreamed of this moment for years, the moment when Obinna would realize his mistake, would see what he had thrown away, would understand the magnitude of his loss. But now that it had happened, she felt no triumph. Just a deep, abiding peace that came from knowing she had survived, had thrived, had built a life far beyond anything she had imagined in those dark days after Ifeanyi's birth. She had won. Not because she had destroyed Obinna, but because she had saved herself, and that, she realized, was the best revenge of all. Except the story was far from over, because what Funke didn't know yet was that Obinna wasn't just some random guest at the presidential function. He was there to pitch a major import deal to the government, a deal that would make or break his struggling business, a deal that would have to be approved by the Minister of Commerce, who reported directly to the president, who was Funke's father-in-law. What do you think is going to happen when Obinna realizes the woman he abandoned now has the power to destroy his entire business? Smash that like button if you're ready to see karma work its magic. Subscribe to Voice of Auntie Dora and turn on all notifications because this story is about to get even more explosive. Drop a comment. Do you think Funke should show him mercy or let him face the consequences? Let me hear from you. Where are you watching from? The presidential suite on the top floor of the Transcorp Hilton was everything one would expect. Elegant, spacious, with floor-to-ceiling windows offering a panoramic view of Abuja's skyline. But Funke barely noticed the luxury as she sank into the plush sofa, her hands still trembling from the encounter downstairs. Damalola knelt in front of her, his hands gently holding hers. Talk to me. What are you feeling? Funke looked at her husband, this man who had somehow seen value in her when she felt worthless, who had loved her when she thought she was unlovable, and felt tears prick her eyes. I'm angry, she admitted. 5 years later, and I'm still angry. Not because of what he did to me. I've healed from that. I'm angry because of what he tried to do just now. Humiliate me, dismiss me, make me feel small again, as if I was still that desperate woman he abandoned. You were never that woman, Damalola said firmly. You were always extraordinary. You just hadn't realized it yet. Funke managed a small smile. You always know what to say. I speak only truth. He stood and pulled her up gently. Now we need to get you freshened up. The function starts in an hour, and my father wants us there early. Some important business delegations are presenting proposals tonight. Business proposals at a state function? Funke raised an eyebrow. Welcome to Nigerian politics, Damalola said with a wry smile. Everything is business, even celebrations. But don't worry, we just need to make an appearance, smile for the cameras, and then we can escape back here. I already arranged for Ifeanyi and Zainab to have dinner with us later. They're with my mother right now, probably being spoiled beyond recognition. The mention of her children made Funke's heart warm. Ifeanyi, her 5-year-old son, who barely remembered the hard times before Damalola came into their lives. And Zainab, their daughter, born into privilege and love that Funke had never known as a child herself. How did I get so lucky? She whispered. Luck had nothing to do with it, Damalola replied. You survived. You fought. You kept going when most people would have given up. That's not luck, my love. That's strength. 30 minutes later, Funke stood in front of the mirror in their bedroom, adjusting her dress one final time. She had changed into an even more elegant outfit, a flowing gold deal head wrap that added inches to her height, matched with a stunning emerald green Ankara gown designed by Deola Sagoe herself. Diamond earrings that Damalola had given her on their anniversary sparkled at her ears. She looked like what she was, the wife of the president's son, comfortable in her position, radiating quiet confidence and grace. It was hard to reconcile this woman with the one who had existed 5 years ago. 5 years earlier, Funke had been living in a single room in Guagualada, one of Abuja's poorer suburbs. 7 months pregnant, abandoned by Obina, who had cleaned out their joint account and disappeared with his secretary, she had been working as a waitress at a local restaurant when her water broke 2 months early. She remembered the terror of going into premature labor alone, remembered the rushed trip to the government hospital, remembered lying in a crowded ward surrounded by other women's pain and screams, with no husband, no family, no money for private care. Ifeanyi had been born tiny and struggling, spending his first 3 weeks in an incubator that Funke couldn't afford. She had begged, borrowed, and sold everything she owned, her phone, her jewelry, even her wedding ring, to pay for his care. When they finally released her baby, she took him back to that one room and looked at his tiny face and made a promise. She would survive. She would provide. She would never let him suffer because of her mistakes in choosing his father. She had found work cleaning offices in the presidential complex, night shift work that paid slightly better than day jobs, and allowed her to leave Ifeanyi with a neighbor who charged less for overnight care. She would arrive at 8 p.m. and work until 6 a.m., mopping floors, emptying bins, scrubbing toilets, making the offices of powerful people pristine before they arrived each morning. It was exhausting, humiliating work for someone who had graduated with a degree in business administration. But it paid the bills. It kept Ifeanyi fed. It kept them alive. And it was there, at 2 a.m. on a Tuesday night 6 months after Ifeanyi's birth, that she had met Damalola Okonkwo. "You're remembering," Damalola said softly, coming up behind her and wrapping his arms around her waist. "I can always tell when you're thinking about those days. You get this faraway look in your eyes." "I was thinking about the night we met," Funke admitted. "How different everything was. How impossible this life would have seemed to that version of me." "Tell me again," Damalola requested. "I never get tired of hearing it from your perspective." Funke leaned back against him. "I was cleaning your office. You were working late, as usual. I tried to be invisible. That's what we were trained to do. Don't disturb the important people, just clean around them, pretend you don't exist." "But I saw you," Damalola murmured. "You saw me," Funke confirmed. "You looked up from your papers and said good evening, like I was a person. Not a cleaner, not invisible, just a person." "Do you know how rare that was? It should be common human decency. Should be and is are very different things in Nigeria." Funke smiled at the memory. "You asked if I wanted tea. I thought you were joking, but you insisted, made 2 cups, and we sat there at 2 a.m. drinking tea and talking about nothing important, about the weather, about Abuja traffic, about why the air conditioning was always too cold." "I thought you were beautiful," Damalola said, "even exhausted, even in that oversized cleaning uniform, even trying to make yourself invisible. I saw you, and something in my heart just knew." "You didn't ask me out for 6 months," Funke reminded him. "I didn't want to be that man," Damalola said firmly. "The man who hits on the cleaning woman because he has power and she has none. I wanted to know you first, to be your friend. To make sure that when I finally asked, it was because we had built something real, not because you felt pressured or obligated. And when you finally did ask, you said no," Damalola laughed. 3 times you said no. You thought I was playing with you. You thought it was some kind of joke or test. Can you blame me?" Funke turned to face him. The president's son asking out a single mother who cleaned toilets for a living? It sounded like the beginning of a very bad story. Instead, it was the beginning of our story, Damalola said, kissing her forehead. The best story of my life. A knock on the door interrupted them. "Sir, ma'am," one of the security personnel called. "The function is beginning. The president has requested your presence." "Time to face the masses," Damalola said with mock dread. "Ready?" Funke took a deep breath and nodded. "Ready." The grand ballroom of the Transcorp Hilton had been transformed into a glittering showcase of Nigerian power and wealth. Hundreds of guests in elaborate traditional attire mingled beneath crystal chandeliers. Live band music filled the air. Waiters circulated with trays of champagne and small chops. And in the center of it all, holding court near the main stage, stood President Okonkwo himself, a distinguished man in his 60s, wearing immaculate white agbada, surrounded by ministers, governors, and business leaders all vying for his attention. When Funke and Damalola entered, a ripple went through the crowd. Heads turned, conversations paused, people moved aside to create a path. "Mr. President," Damalola said formally as they approached, though his eyes were warm with affection for his father. "Damalola, my son," the president embraced him, then turned to Funke with genuine warmth. "And my beautiful daughter, you look radiant tonight, Funke." "Thank you, sir," Funke said, accepting his embrace. She still sometimes couldn't believe this was her life, being embraced by the president of Nigeria, being called his daughter, being accepted without reservation into a family of such power and prominence. "I heard there was some unpleasantness downstairs earlier," the president said quietly, his eyes sharp. "Something about a man harassing you?" "Nothing I couldn't handle, sir," Funke assured him. "Still," the president's voice took on an edge that reminded everyone why he had successfully navigated Nigerian politics for decades. "I don't tolerate disrespect toward my family." "Security has the man's name. We'll deal with it appropriately." "Dad, Funke said she wants to handle it her way," Damalola interjected gently. The president looked at his daughter-in-law with renewed respect. "Very well, but if you change your mind, you only need to say the word. Now come, there are people who want to meet you both." For the next hour, Funke and Damalola circulated through the ballroom, greeting dignitaries, posing for photos, making small talk with ministers and their wives. Funke had learned to navigate these events over the past 3 years. She knew which conversations were genuine and which were strategic, knew how to be gracious without being a pushover, knew how to represent her husband and his family with dignity. She was deep in conversation with the wife of the Minister of Education when she felt, rather than saw him. Obinna. He had entered the ballroom with his business partners, all of them now looking considerably more nervous than they had in the lobby. They hovered near the entrance, clearly intimidated by the concentration of power in the room, unsure of their place in this gathering. And Obinna's eyes were locked on her. She watched him take in the scene, Funke standing confidently among the political elite, laughing at something the minister's wife had said, her diamond jewelry catching the light, her posture radiating the assurance of someone who belonged exactly where she was. She watched him see Damalola returning to her side with fresh drinks, the casual intimacy of how Damalola's hand found her waist, the way they leaned into each other like two people who had built a life together, not just a marriage of convenience. She watched Obinna's face cycle through emotions, shock, regret, envy, and slowly dawning horror as he began to understand not just who she had become, but what that meant for him. Because at that exact moment, the MC took the microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen, if I could have your attention, please. We're about to begin the evening's business presentations. Several companies will be pitching proposals for major government contracts. First up, we have Nwosu Imports, represented by CEO Obinna Nwosu." Funke felt Damalola tense beside her. "Nwosu Imports? That's the company with the controversial trade proposal, the one Father asked me to review." "Review?" Funke's voice was carefully neutral. "Yes. As Minister of Commerce, I have to approve or reject their application for import licenses. It's a huge contract, could make or break a company that size. If approved, they'd become the exclusive importer for several categories of goods. Millions of dollars in guaranteed revenue. Funke watched as Obinna made his way to the small stage that had been set up, his earlier bravado completely gone, replaced by visible nervousness. He had clearly done his research since the lobby encounter. His eyes kept darting between Funke and Damalola, understanding now exactly who he had insulted, exactly whose wife he had tried to humiliate. "Mr. President, esteemed ministers, distinguished guests," Obinna began, his voice shaking slightly. "Thank you for this opportunity to present Nwosu Imports' proposal for exclusive importation rights." As he spoke, outlining his business plan with obvious desperation, Funke felt Damalola lean down to whisper in her ear. "I haven't made my decision yet about their proposal. The business case is actually quite strong. They could provide good value for the government. But I wanted to ask you first." He paused. "Is this the man who abandoned you?" Funke nodded slightly. "Then he's about to learn an important lesson," Damalola said quietly. "That in Nigeria, business and relationships are inseparable. And he just destroyed any hope of a relationship with the one person who controls his future." On stage, Obinna stumbled over his words, clearly aware that the president's son was watching him, clearly aware that the woman he had abandoned now stood at the center of the power structure that controlled his fate. And as Funke watched him sweat through his presentation, watched him realize the full magnitude of what he had lost and what he had done, she felt something shift inside her. This wasn't about revenge. This had never been about revenge. This was about justice, about consequences, about the universe finally balancing scales that had been tipped against her for far too long. Obinna finished his presentation to polite but unenthusiastic applause. As he left the stage, his eyes found Funke's across the crowded ballroom. She held his gaze, her expression neutral, giving nothing away. Because the real question wasn't what she would do. The real question was what Damalola would decide. And what the president, her father-in-law, who didn't tolerate disrespect toward his family, would allow. After Obinna's presentation, the ballroom buzzed with conversation as other companies took their turns, pitching proposals to the assembled government officials. But Funke barely heard any of it. She was acutely aware of Obinna's presence across the room, of how he kept glancing in her direction with an expression that mixed fear, regret, and desperate calculation. "He's going to try to approach you," Damalola murmured, his hand tightening protectively on her waist. "I can see it in his body language. He's working up the courage." "Let him," Funke said quietly. "I want to hear what he has to say now that he understands who I am." "You don't owe him anything. Not your time, not your attention, certainly not your mercy." "I know," Funke agreed. "But I need to face him properly. Not in a lobby where I was caught off guard, but here, where I'm standing in my truth. In my power. Does that make sense?" Damalola studied her face for a long moment, then nodded slowly. "It makes perfect sense. You're reclaiming the narrative. Finishing what he tried to start downstairs on your terms, not his." "Exactly." "I'll be right beside you," Damalola promised. "The moment you want him gone, just say the word." They didn't have to wait long. As the final presentation concluded and guests began mingling again, Obinna made his move. He crossed the ballroom with visible reluctance, his business partners hanging back, clearly wanting no part of what was about to happen. "Funke," Obinna said as he approached, his voice completely different from the sneering contempt of the lobby. Now it was tentative, almost pleading. Could we talk, please?" Damalola's entire body tensed, but Funke laid a gentle hand on his arm. "It's okay," she said softly. Then, to Obinna, "We can talk, right here." "I meant privately," Obinna tried. "No," Funke said firmly. "Whatever you need to say to me, you can say in front of my husband. I don't keep secrets from him, and I certainly don't have private conversations with men who once abandoned me pregnant and penniless." Obinna flinched at the words. Several nearby guests had paused their conversations, sensing drama unfolding. Within moments, a small crowd had gathered at a respectful distance, pretending not to listen while hanging on every word. Obina swallowed hard. I owe you an apology. For downstairs. For what I said. I didn't know. You didn't know I had married well? Funka interrupted, her voice sharp. You didn't know I had power now? So your apology is conditional? You're sorry because I turned out to be somebody important, not because what you did was wrong? That's not what I meant, Obina said desperately. I mean, yes, I'm shocked that you married, but that's not why I'm apologizing. What I did downstairs was terrible. The things I said were the same things you've always thought about me, Funka finished. You didn't suddenly become cruel in that lobby, Obina. You revealed who you've always been. The only difference is that 5 years ago, when you abandoned me, there were no witnesses, no cameras, no consequences. I made a mistake, Obina said, and there were actual tears in his eyes now. Leaving you was the biggest mistake of my life. I was young, stupid, scared of responsibility. You were 30 years old, Funka corrected coldly. Not young. And you weren't scared of responsibility. You were perfectly happy to take on responsibility for your mistress. You just didn't want responsibility for me and our child. Our child? Obina's voice cracked. Funka, we have a child together? I thought, downstairs you mentioned a son, but I assumed... You assumed wrong about many things, Funka said. Yes, we have a son, Ifeanyi. He's 5 years old now. Beautiful, intelligent, kind, everything you'll never be. Can I meet him? Obina asked desperately. No. Damalola spoke for the first time, his voice like iron. You lost that right when you abandoned him before he was born. Ifeanyi is my son now. I adopted him legally. I'm the only father he knows, and I'm the only father he'll ever need. Obina looked like he'd been struck. But I'm his biological father. Biology means nothing, Damalola said flatly. Fatherhood is earned through presence, love, sacrifice. You provided DNA, that's all. I provided everything else. Please, Obina's voice dropped to a whisper. Funka, please. I know I hurt you. I know I was terrible. But I'm begging you, don't punish me for mistakes I made 5 years ago. I'm trying to build something now. That business proposal, it's everything to me. My company is struggling. This contract would save us. I have employees depending on me, suppliers, creditors. If this deal falls through, you'll lose everything. Funka finished quietly. You'll end up with nothing. Broke, desperate, alone. Yes, Obina admitted, tears streaming down his face now, all pride abandoned. I'll lose everything, just like you did when I left. I understand the irony. I understand this is karma. But please, Funka, if you ever felt anything for me, if there's any mercy in your heart, don't destroy me. Don't let what I did to you 5 years ago ruin my entire future. The ballroom had gone quiet around them. Everyone was watching now, not even pretending otherwise. This was the kind of drama that would be discussed in Abuja's social circles for months. Funka looked at the man who had once been her husband, this man who was begging for mercy now that the tables had turned. She thought about the woman she had been 5 years ago. Young, terrified, abandoned, giving birth alone because he had chosen comfort over responsibility. She thought about the night she had cried herself to sleep in that one-room apartment, wondering how she would feed her baby, wondering if she would survive. She thought about every humiliation, every struggle, every moment when she had wanted to give up but kept going because she had no choice. And she thought about who she was now, not because of Obina, but despite him. Strong, successful, loved, whole. You want to know what's interesting? Funka said finally, her voice carrying in the silent ballroom. When you left me 5 years ago, I begged you to stay. I called you dozens of times. I sent messages. I pleaded for you to come back, not even for me, but for our unborn child. Do you remember what you said the last time we spoke? Obina's face went pale. You said, "This is not my problem anymore." You should have been more careful. Don't contact me again." Funka's voice was steady, but everyone could hear the old pain underneath. "You blocked my number. You disappeared. And when I had our son, when I nearly died from complications, when I was selling my belongings to pay for his medical care, where were you, Obinna?" "I was wrong," he whispered. "I was so wrong." "You were with your mistress," Funka continued, "living comfortably, building your business with money we had saved together, money you stole from our joint account. You weren't wrong, Obinna. You were cruel, deliberately, calculatingly cruel. And now you want revenge," Obinna said hollowly. "I understand. I deserve it." "No," Funka said, and something in her tone made everyone lean in closer. "I don't want revenge. I wanted revenge 5 years ago, when I was desperate and broken and abandoned, but I don't want it now. Do you know why?" Obinna shook his head mutely. "Because revenge would mean you still matter to me. It would mean I'm still carrying the weight of what you did, still letting you occupy space in my heart and mind. And Obinna, you don't matter to me anymore. You're not important enough to hate. You're not significant enough to destroy. You're just a man who made terrible choices and is now facing the consequences of those choices." She turned to Damalola. "The decision about his business proposal is yours to make. You're the Minister of Commerce. You know the technical merits of his application. Judge it on that basis alone. Don't factor me into it. Don't let our history influence government business." "Funka," Damalola said gently. "Are you sure?" "I'm sure," Funka said firmly. "I don't want him to fail because of me. If his proposal is solid, if it benefits Nigeria, approve it. If it's not, reject it. But make that decision as a minister, not as my husband." Damalola studied her face for a long moment, then nodded slowly. "Your wisdom is one of the many reasons I love you." He turned to Obinna. "Mr. Nwosu, your proposal will be evaluated on its merits. You'll receive our decision within 2 weeks, following standard government procedures." "Thank you," Obinna breathed. "Thank you so much, I promise." "Don't promise me anything," Funka interrupted. "I don't need your promises, but I'll tell you what I do need. I need you to understand something very clearly." She stepped closer to him, and despite everything, Obinna instinctively stepped back. "You didn't break me when you left," Funka said quietly, but with absolute conviction. "You thought you did. You probably hoped you did. But I survived. I thrived. I built a life so far beyond what you and I had together that it's like comparing a mansion to a shack. And I did it without you, despite you, in defiance of everything you did to try to destroy me." She paused, making sure he was listening. "So, whether your business succeeds or fails, whether you get this contract or lose everything, whether you end up rich or poor, none of it has anything to do with me. Your fate is your own now, just like mine is my own. We're not connected anymore except by biology, and even that connection you severed when you abandoned our son. So live with your choices, Obinna, face your consequences, and leave me out of it." She turned to Damalola. "I'm tired. Can we go upstairs? I want to see our children." "Of course," Damalola said immediately. He offered her his arm, which she took gratefully. As they walked away, leaving Obinna standing in the middle of the ballroom looking utterly destroyed, the crowd parted for them. Funka heard whispers following them. Awe, respect, admiration for how she had handled herself. But she barely registered any of it. She just wanted to hold her children, to remind herself of what really mattered, to ground herself in the life she had built, rather than the past she had escaped. In the elevator, Damalola pulled her close. "That was incredible. You were incredible." "I meant every word," Funka said. "I really don't want revenge. I just want peace." "You'll have it," Damalola promised. "I'll make sure of it." But as the elevator rose toward their suite, neither of them knew that Obinna's story and his connection to their lives was far from over, because desperation makes people do dangerous things. And Obinna, facing the collapse of everything he had built, was about to become very desperate indeed. Can you believe Funka's strength in that moment? Would you have been able to show that kind of grace? Smash that like button if you're in awe of her. Subscribe to Voice of Auntie Dora and turn on notifications. This story has more shocking twists coming. Comment below. Did Funka do the right thing, or should she have used her power to destroy him? Let's discuss. Where are you watching from? 2 days after the presidential function, Funka sat in her home office in the family's residence in Maitama, Abuja's most exclusive district. The house was a sprawling compound with high walls, manicured gardens, and round-the-clock security. A far cry from that one-room apartment in Gwagwalada, where her journey had begun. Through the window, she could see Ifeanyi playing in the garden with his little sister Zainab, their laughter carrying on the breeze. A nanny watched them carefully, but Funka knew that beyond the garden walls, additional security personnel kept watch. Being the president's family came with privileges, but also with precautions. Her phone buzzed with a message from Omatola, her best friend and one of the few people from her old life who had stayed in touch through everything. "Girl, you're all over social media. That video from the hotel is everywhere. Justice for Funka is trending. People are calling you a queen. How are you holding up?" Funka smiled slightly and typed back, "I'm fine. Just ready for this to blow over." "How are the kids?" She was referring to Omatola's twin daughters, whom Funka often helped support financially. Omatola was a single mother too, still struggling in ways that Funka remembered too well. She made sure to regularly send money for school fees, medical bills, whatever was needed, paying forward the grace that had been shown to her. Before Omatola could respond, Funka's phone rang. It was Damalola. "Hello, my love," she answered. "Funka, we need to talk." His voice was tense in a way that immediately put her on alert. "Can you come to my office? Now?" "What's wrong?" "Just, please come. I'll explain everything when you get here." 20 minutes later, Funka sat in her husband's ministerial office, a space that always reminded her of where they had first met, though this office was considerably more grand than the one where she used to clean floors at 2 a.m. Damalola sat across from her, his expression grave. On his desk lay a folder that he pushed toward her with obvious reluctance. "This arrived this morning," he said quietly, "from Obina's lawyers." Funka opened the folder with trembling hands. Inside was a legal document, a petition for paternity rights, and a lawsuit demanding access to Ifeanyi. "He's suing for custody?" Funka's voice rose with panic. "He can't do this. He abandoned him. He has no rights." "He's claiming he never knew about the pregnancy," Damalola said, his jaw tight with anger. "He's saying you hid your son from him and denied him the opportunity to be a father. He's asking for DNA testing, visitation rights, and—" He paused, his hand clenching into a fist on the desk. "He's challenging my adoption, claiming it was done without proper consent from the biological father." Funka felt the room tilt. "This is insane. He knew about the pregnancy. I called him. I sent messages. I have proof." "I know," Damalola said gently, "and we'll present all of that. But Funka, this is going to get ugly. He's hired one of Lagos's most aggressive family law attorneys. They're preparing to drag this through the courts, to make it public, to paint you as someone who deliberately kept a father from his child." "Why?" Funka whispered. "Why is he doing this now?" "Because he's desperate," Damalola said flatly. "His business proposal was reviewed by my team yesterday. It's not good, Funka. The numbers don't add up, the projections are unrealistic, and there are some questionable financial practices in their records. We're going to reject it." Understanding dawned. "So he's trying to force my hand. If I'm fighting him for custody, he thinks I'll pressure you to approve his proposal just to make him go away." "Exactly. It's extortion disguised as a custody battle." "Can he really do this? Can he really take Ifeanyi from us?" Damalola came around the desk and knelt in front of her, taking her hands. "No court in Nigeria is going to give custody to a man who abandoned his child before birth. But they might grant him supervised visitation rights. They might force us to allow him back into Ifeanyi's life in some capacity. And the process itself, the hearings, the investigations, The publicity. It's going to be traumatic for all of us, especially for Ifeanyi. Tears streamed down Funka's face. I can't let him hurt my baby. I won't. Our baby, Damilola corrected firmly. Ifeanyi is our son, and we will protect him together. I've already called our lawyers. We're filing a countersuit claiming abandonment, demanding full termination of Obina's parental rights. And Funka, his voice hardened, I'm done being merciful. This man came after our family. He's threatening our child. I will use every resource at my disposal to destroy him. Your father, Funka said slowly, understanding. If the president gets involved, he already knows, Damilola confirmed, and he's furious. Nobody threatens his grandson. Obina has no idea what he's just unleashed. That evening, Funka sat in the children's playroom, watching Ifeanyi build a tower with blocks. He was so innocent, so happy, completely unaware of the legal battle being waged over his future. Mama, look! Ifeanyi called out proudly. I made it tall like Daddy's building. It's beautiful, baby, Funka managed to say, her heart breaking. When is Daddy coming home? Ifeanyi asked. He promised to play football with me. Soon, my love. He had to work late. Ifeanyi went back to his blocks, humming a song he'd learned at school. Zainab toddled over and deliberately knocked down his tower, and instead of getting angry, Ifeanyi laughed and started building again, letting his little sister help. This was her life now, this joy, this peace, this family, and Obina was trying to destroy it. Her phone buzzed, an unknown number. She almost didn't answer, but something made her pick up. Funka, please don't hang up. It was Obina, his voice desperate. I need to talk to you. Through our lawyers, Funka said coldly. Just give me 2 minutes, please. I'm begging you. Against her better judgment, Funka walked out of the playroom into the hallway where the children couldn't hear. Talk. You have 1 minute. I don't want to do this, Obina said, and he sounded genuinely tortured. The lawsuit, the custody battle, none of this is what I want. Then drop it. I can't. My business is dying, Funka. I'm drowning in debt. My partners are threatening to sue me. My wife left me last week because she found out about my financial problems. Everything is falling apart. And that's my problem how? Just tell your husband to approve the contract, Obina pleaded. That's all I'm asking. 1 approval and I'll drop the lawsuit. I'll sign away all parental rights. I'll disappear from your life forever. Just give me this one thing. You're trying to extort the Minister of Commerce? Funka's voice was ice. Do you understand what you're confessing to right now? There was a pause. Are you recording this call? Yes, Funka lied smoothly. She wasn't, but she wanted him to sweat. Every word. Funka, please. Let me explain something to you, Obina, very clearly. Even if I wanted to help you, which I don't, I couldn't. My husband makes decisions based on national interest and proper governance, not because his wife asks him favors. Your proposal was evaluated fairly. It was found lacking. That's not personal. That's business. But you could try. You could ask him to reconsider. Why would I do that for you? Why would I help the man who abandoned me and is now threatening to traumatize my son with a custody battle? Because I'm desperate, Obina shouted. Don't you understand? I have nothing left. No business, no wife, no future. All I'm asking for is 1 chance. I gave you chances, Funka said quietly. I gave you the chance to be a father when I was pregnant. You said no. I gave you the chance to be decent at the hotel. You chose mockery. I gave you the chance to walk away with dignity at the function. You chose litigation. You've had all the chances you're going to get. Then I'll fight, Obina threatened. I'll make this so ugly, so public, that your perfect family will be dragged through every newspaper and blog in Nigeria. I'll claim you're an unfit mother. I'll find witnesses who'll say you were neglectful. I'll make your life hell until you give me what I want. Do your worst, Funka said calmly, though her heart was pounding. But understand this, you're not fighting me anymore. You're fighting the Okonkwo family. You're fighting the president of Nigeria. And you will lose. Spectacularly, publicly, permanently. She hung up before he could respond. Her hands were shaking, but not with fear, with rage. How dare he threaten her family? How dare he try to use her child as a bargaining chip? Damalola came home an hour later and found her in the master bedroom, staring out the window at the Abuja skyline. "He called you, didn't he?" Damalola said, not really asking. "How did you know?" "Because my security team flagged an unknown number calling your phone. We traced it. It was Obinna." He came to stand beside her. "What did he say?" Funke told him everything. The extortion attempt, the threats, the desperate pleading. When she finished, Damalola was quiet for a long moment. "I've made a decision," he said finally. "About the business proposal and about the custody lawsuit." "What kind of decision?" "Tomorrow morning, I'm holding a press conference. I'm going to publicly announce the rejection of Nwosu Imports' proposal, and I'm going to explain exactly why. The financial irregularities, the unrealistic projections, everything. It will destroy any credibility he has left in the business community." "And the lawsuit?" Funke asked. "Our lawyers are filing for emergency dismissal based on abandonment and extortion. But more than that." Damalola's eyes were hard. "I'm having him investigated. His business, his finances, his personal life, everything. And if we find anything illegal, anything at all, I'm having him prosecuted. No mercy, no second chances." "Damalola, that's necessary," he finished firmly. "This man threatened our child, Funke. He tried to extort a government official. He's not just your ex-husband anymore. He's a criminal. And he's going to be treated like one." Funke knew she should feel something. Guilt, perhaps, or concern about how far this was escalating. But all she felt was relief that someone was finally, completely on her side. Someone who would fight for her and their children without hesitation or compromise. "What if he tries something else?" she asked quietly. "What if he gets more desperate?" "That's why I'm doubling our security," Damalola said. "You, the children, this house, everything is being protected. He's not going to hurt this family. I won't allow it." That night, as Funke lay in bed, she thought about how far she had come from that one-room apartment, from that desperate woman who had begged her abandoner to come back. She had survived. She had built something beautiful from ashes. And now that beauty was under threat, but this time she wasn't alone. This time she wasn't defenseless. This time she had resources, power, and people who loved her enough to fight for her. Obinna had made a fatal mistake. He had underestimated her once when he left. Now he was underestimating what she had become. Not just a woman who had married well, but a woman who had learned to fight, to stand, to refuse to be broken ever again. Tomorrow would bring new battles. But tonight, she held her sleeping children and her husband close, and she knew with absolute certainty that whatever came next, she would face it, and she would win. The press conference was scheduled for 10 a.m. at the Ministry of Commerce headquarters. By 9:30, the room was packed with journalists, cameras, and curious government officials who had heard whispers that something significant was about to be announced. Funke stood backstage with Damalola, watching through a monitor as the crowd settled. She wore a crisp white pantsuit and her natural locks styled in an elegant crown, a queen preparing to watch justice be served. "Last chance to change your mind," Damalola said quietly. "We can still handle this privately." "No," Funke said firmly. "He made it public when he filed that lawsuit. He wanted a spectacle. Let's give him one." At exactly 10 a.m., Damalola took the podium, flanked by ministry officials and legal advisors. "Good morning. I'm here to address the recent application by Nwosu Imports for exclusive import licensing," he began, his voice carrying the authority of his position. "After thorough review, this ministry has rejected the proposal due to financial irregularities, falsified documentation, and unrealistic business projections that would have cost the Nigerian government millions in losses." Cameras flashed. Journalists scribbled notes frantically. "Furthermore," Damalola continued, his voice hardening, "it has come to our attention that Mr. Obinna Nwosu attempted to extort this office by filing a fraudulent custody lawsuit against my family, threatening to drop said lawsuit only if his business proposal was approved. This constitutes attempted bribery of a government official and abuse of the judicial system. The room erupted in gasps and shouted questions. The Attorney General's office has been notified and will be pursuing criminal charges. Additionally, the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission will be investigating Inwosu imports for tax evasion and financial fraud uncovered during our review process. Damalola paused, letting the magnitude of his words sink in. This government will not tolerate corruption, extortion, or attempts to manipulate the legal system for personal gain. Mr. Nwosu's actions will be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. By noon, Obina's world had completely collapsed. His business partners had publicly distanced themselves from him. His bank had frozen his accounts pending the EFCC investigation. His lawyer had withdrawn from representing him, unwilling to be associated with attempted extortion of the president's family. And the custody lawsuit? A judge had dismissed it within hours, citing frivolous litigation and clear evidence of extortion. The judge's ruling included a permanent restraining order preventing Obina from contacting Funka, Damalola, or Ifeanyi ever again. Funka watched the news coverage from her home, Ifeanyi playing happily at her feet, completely unaware of the storm that had threatened him and was now dissipating like smoke. Her phone rang. It was Obina's mother, a woman she hadn't spoken to in 5 years. "Are you happy now?" the older woman wailed. "My son has lost everything. His business, his reputation, his future, all because you wanted revenge." "No," Funka said calmly. "All because your son tried to extort a government official and use an innocent child as a weapon. I didn't destroy him. He destroyed himself with his choices. Just like he destroyed our marriage 5 years ago with his choices. But he's going to prison. They're saying 5 to 7 years for attempted extortion and financial fraud." "Then he'll have time to reflect on his decisions," Funka said without sympathy. "Goodbye, Ma." She hung up and blocked the number. 3 months later, Funka stood in the same hotel lobby where Obina had first tried to humiliate her. This time, she was there for a charity gala she had organized, a fundraiser for single mothers in difficult circumstances, providing them with business training, childcare support, and legal assistance. The event raised 12 million naira in one night. As Funka gave her closing speech, sharing her own story of abandonment and survival, without mentioning names, she looked out at the audience of powerful people who had come to support her cause. She saw tears in many eyes, saw recognition of her strength, saw respect earned not through her marriage, but through her character. "We survive because we must," she concluded. "We rise because we refuse to stay down. And we thrive because we finally understand that our worth was never determined by those who abandoned us, but by what we built from the ashes they left behind." The applause was thunderous. Later that night, at home with Damalola and the children, Funka received an email. It was from a women's advocacy organization asking her to speak at their international conference about her journey from poverty to empowerment. "Are you going to do it?" Damalola asked, reading over her shoulder. "Yes," Funka decided. "Because my story isn't just about me anymore. It's about every woman who's been abandoned, dismissed, or told she's worthless. They need to know that endings can become beginnings, that destruction can become transformation." She looked at her family, her husband who saw her worth, her children who knew only love and security, her life that she had built with determination and grace. Obina had thought kicking her out of his life would destroy her. Instead, he had freed her to become something far greater than he could ever imagine. And that, she realized with perfect clarity, was the sweetest justice of all. If this story touched your heart, smash that like button. Subscribe to Voice of Auntie Dora for more incredible stories of resilience and triumph. Comment below. What's the most powerful lesson from Funka's journey? Share this with every woman who needs to remember that her worth is not determined by those who abandon her. God bless you all.